more door prizes or no? After? Okay. So after this, we're going to do some door prizes. And it looks like we're ready to go. Okay. Aho. So once again, let's give him a big warm welcome. Chief Cadmus DeLorme. He's going to do his presentation.
Let's take this. The Naskaman. Thank you very much for welcoming me up to Treaty 6. I left Cowes way too late and I got here a little later than expected, but thank you for waiting. My name is Cadmus. I come from Cowes. I'm 40 years old. I look young. That's that reserve water I get to shower in every day. Well, I look so young. My wife and I raised 4 beautiful little human beings back home on Cowes. I've been elected chief almost 7 years. I got a gray hair for every month I've been elected here, so I actually absolutely enjoy my journey. I'm going to explain to us a couple things, and I know I'm late in the day, so I'm going to really get to the point on some of my conversation. But for the next half an hour to 40 minutes, I want to take us on a journey on what we just inherited as Indigenous men. It's really tough sometimes to understand when we wake up or when we go on our community Facebook page or when we get into situations and why. They ever ask that question, why? Like, what happened? How did we get to this moment where it's just so confusing at times to even look in the mirror, to be in surroundings, to stay optimistic, to stay forward thinking? Like, what happened? You know, as a young man, I grew up on Cowes, and I was raised by a mom and dad that went to residential school. And, you know, anybody in here that attended, you're my hero. And I do this to show you what reconciliation could look like. But growing up on my First Nation, on Cowes, I also grew up on Ochapowace, Kakwishau, and Zagame. We're all connected. We snag each other and all that. So we're very connected back home. But growing up there, I have about 4 or 5 nicknames. Because in our communities, when you're liked, you get teased. And so I got raised by all 4 of the community growing up. And I always remember my dad. My dad passed away in 2017. He got to see me be a chief. But my first memory of understanding what it means to be Indigenous and how much work we have to do, my dad would lock the door at our house on Cowes. And he would take the sweater off this nail and put the key on it, then put the sweater over, and we'd leave at our house. And I was just a kid, and I was telling my dad, Dad, aren't you afraid someone's going to find this key? I was like, it's so simple. He's like, don't worry, my boy. We don't walk with our head up around here. What do you mean, Dad? I'm looking at it right now, I told him. Don't worry about it, my boy, he said. I remember that as a little kid. And I was like, I got older. And you get to that stage in life on the community where you're standing with a group of your bros and this joint gets pulled out. And right away, my voice in my head, my mom and dad told me to say no, but I got to keep cool here. So I said no the first time and watched my bros at this rodeo laugh a little harder, and I couldn't figure out why it was so funny. And I was 14, 15. They did it again, and I was like, no, my mom and dad said I shouldn't do that. So third time, it looked too much fun, so I tried it. And then you try it again. And by the time I was 16, 17 in my community, it just become a normal thing, your $5 chip-ins and whatnot. And, then I was struggling in school a little bit, looking in the mirror. I'm like, what the heck's going on here? Like, is this just regular life? Like, is this just what it's kind of supposed to be? And I eventually graduated my high school on Cowes. My wheel shimmied through the finish line, but I got through my undergrad, my high school. And then I stayed on the res. I had the big dream of being a rec director of houses one day. I thought that'd be such a cool job. And, I was 19, still living at home. And I remember one time I come home and I just have these little odd end jobs. And my mom was really disappointed in me one day. And I kind of, just trying to act calm around her. And I was confused. My confidence was not there. And my mom told me, I raised you better than this. Okay. I was like, what do you mean? Well, I sacrificed to help you to do better. And you're falling in to this thing I told you never to do. And I was like, Mom, I don't know what else to do. I said, this is just how it is around here. Like, I don't see it any different. And so my parents signed me up for this university in Lethbridge, the Lethbridge University. I'm a golfer. I'm going to get to that later. And they did all my application for me. I just this res boy, I was this res kid. Big dreams of one day getting my own res house, maybe being the rec director. And, I had some big dreams. And my mom and dad got me accepted into this university in Lethbridge. And first time I ever left the reserve, like really left the reserve without always being around my caramel colored cousins and all that. You look in the room, and I got accepted and I went. I told my mom and dad, I'll go. And my mom sat with me and my dad, and they're both sitting there, and they said, we're going to buy you a car, but you got to promise us one thing, that you'll leave your partying here. You're not going to take it with you to Lethbridge. What kind of car are you going to buy me? I asked them. I was really negotiating with them. And we come from kind of a poor family, so it wasn't. They got me this really nice car. And I was like, okay, I'll stop. I won't do it. And this past August was 20 years since I ever got $5 chip-ins or drank a beer, because I made that promise at that time 20 years ago. This past August, it was 2002. And, oh, thank you. Thank you. And I went to Lethbridge. I left optimistic. Oh my gosh, I'm going to just go and get a university degree, go home, buy a big house and all this, and buy a nice car. I get there. My parents leave. The second day I'm in Lethbridge, I haven't seen an Indian in 2 days. I was seeing all these vanilla colored skin every day and all this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to go home. I want to go back to the reserve. This life isn't for me. I love that 10-kilometer life on Cowsis. This 100-kilometer life in Lethbridge isn't for me. And then I started to take my classes. And I was in this one class, in this English class, and I wasn't doing well. It was month 2, and I was depressed. I was lonely. I just didn't want to be there. I wanted to go back home. I was just totally out of my element. And this teacher sat down with me, and it was my first ever moment why I knew I had to do that. Because he says, you're not doing good, Cadmus, in school. And when I was in Lethbridge, I was like, I know, I want to go home. And he said, I understand your people, he said. And this was in 2002, and I looked at him. Well, how are we then? I told him. I didn't know how to respond to him. Wasn't a First Nation guy. And he told me, I took a Native Studies class one time. Like, I just want to go home. I told him, I just don't belong here. And Christmas time, I moved home. My parents come and got me, and I left that place. But when I got home, I went down to visit my bros that I left in August. And when I called them, because we didn't text back then yet, I called them and I said, hey, I'm home. You guys want to hang out? Yeah, you got $5. I'm like, no, I'm not going to chip in. I just want to hang out, I said, just with the bros. And so I went, and I left in August. I came back in December. My bros were still $5 chip-in, still watching the same VHS, Dazed and Confused, still laughing at the same parts. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was gone for 5 months. You guys are still doing the same thing. And they're like, oh, you're acting too good for us now, Cadmus. I'm like, no, I'm not. I was like, did you guys do anything since us gone? And they're like laughing at me, like, yeah, you'll go for 5 months. Now you're too good for us. I'm like, I'm not too good for you. I'm observing. Why I start off with that is I was in my element my whole life, my comfort zone. And I built my comfort zone about the norms and patterns that I would see. And when my parents forced me out of my comfort zone for 4 months, that was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Because when I came back home, I seen it differently. And that night I got home and I told my mom and dad, I'm ready. I see it. I know what you're trying to do to me. You're trying to make me see it from a different view. And so I eventually made my way to a Sega casino in White Bear. I became a live games blackjack dealer. And I always thank Sega because I was this scrawny, cheeky, no confidence little res kid from Cowses. And when you're a card dealer, anybody who plays cards or works in the casino at one time, you got to stand at this blackjack table for 6 hours. And you got someone drunk, someone trying to card count, and you got 3 having fun over here. And so you learn really quickly how to communicate. And for 2 years, Sega invested in me. Stood me up, brushed me off, dusted me off, and I came out of there a very just calm, confident, still cheeky person. And I was like, I want to do something else. I want to try university. I knew I was First Nation. I knew I was Indian. I knew I was Indigenous. I knew I was Aboriginal. I knew I was Native. But I didn't know what the heck that meant, because that's all I ever lived and breathed every day. And so I attended the First Nations University of Canada. Just because I grew up on Cowes, just because there was a residential school in my community, just because my parents went to residential school, I had no clue what my history was. It was just a normal living way of life for me, growing up in my community. And when I went to First Nations University of Canada, I took 4 classes because I didn't have high marks, but I got in as a mature student at 22, over the age of 21. So it didn't matter your marks, you got in as a mature student. I took 4 classes. I took Indigenous Studies, because I'm like, oh, this one will be a walk in the park for me. I am Indigenous. I can take Indigenous Studies. I took Cree, because I only knew the kakash dirty words growing up. I didn't know how to speak my language. I took English, and I took a basic math class. I went into Native Studies, or Indigenous Studies 100. The second class, this teacher started to talk about my history, our history. And I'm like, what do you mean residential schools did that to my parents? What do you mean the Indian Act and all this, try to do this to my people? I wouldn't allow that to happen. I start to have this little attitude. And then I'm like, I start to get angry and frustrated at the history. When I really start to get into understanding what the history we went through, I'd go home on weekends. I'd ask my dad, what happened in residential school? My dad would look at me, oh, my boy, you don't want to know. Dad, I'm learning about it in university. This is what they're telling me. Is this true? Ah, my boy, I never taught you that stuff, never talked to you, because I would never, ever want you to know what I went through. Mom, is this what had happened? Oh, my boy, I protected you, she said. I never, ever wanted to talk about that. And I'd go back to my Indigenous Studies class, and I was so consumed and so interested in my history, I became addicted to our history. And I took that anger and frustration, and my mom and dad still shy to talk about it, as something is clicking here for me. And so I took another Indigenous Studies class, and I took a third Indigenous Studies class. And I was so consumed in our history, I used all that, any frustration or anger that I had, and I started using it as motivation and strategy to start to show what history we inherited. And I started to learn even more. Then my parents started to open up to me a little bit. And the more my dad told me about it in 2006 and 2007, I would my dad and I started to become a little closer. Because my dad was the kind of person growing up, he loved me. He never gave me that physical touch. He never told me he loved me, but he did everything for me. I never questioned his love. But that's just who my dad was to me. And so in 2009, 2010, I started to really get into my studies. And I eventually got an undergrad in business administration at First Nations University of Canada. I went in just this young mind. I came out, what I felt was a spirit awakening in Indigenous governance, Indigenous worldview, but I also got a business degree out of it. I kind of knew I wanted to be a chief then, but I wanted to be a chief that really knew what reconciliation meant. And that's both sides of this treaty coin. Because I grew up and lived Indigenous my whole life, I wanted to make sure I knew that Western worldview as well. And so I went and got my master's at this place called the Johnson Shiama School of Public Policy. And there was almost no Indigenous content, and there was all about legislation, parliament building. It was all about the Munya way of governance. I got my master's in that. And I'm like, I went home and I told my dad, Dad, I want to be a chief. I'm going to swear, okay? This is what my dad told me. Why the fuck you want to do that? Dad, isn't that like the most honorable thing is your son wants to be a chief? I'm going to swear again. You're fucking better than that, he told me. Dad, your son wants to be a chief and you don't think I should be a chief? My dad passed away in 2017. I know exactly what he means today when he says that. I'm like, I should have listened to my dad 7 years ago. I'm just teasing. I love being a chief. Then I started to go to my community. I started to go and sit with the elders, sit with the family kinships. Election was coming up. And the first question I would get, well, why don't you run for council first? But I'm not a counselor. I'm a chief. I was like, a chief brings the tone. And a counselor is there to make decisions. I'm not a decision maker. I'm a strategy and tone setter. Well, aren't you just this scrawny little kid a couple of years ago? Where'd you get all this education? I'm like, right? I said, I'm ready. And I got elected as chief in 2016, my first term. Absolutely loved it. Got thrown to the wolves. Everything I thought I learned growing up, everything that I seen, when you sit there as a chief in that chair, you see your people from a different lens. It doesn't matter if you grew up in your community. My best friends from high school then changed because of how chief and councils are viewed in our communities. And this is the first lesson I want to teach and share with you. One of the ugliest things in our history, amongst many things I'm going to talk about, was the Indian agent. There was an Indian agent in each one of our communities from 1880 to 1970. The knowledge keepers and Katayak in this room could probably remember when that Indian agent left. That Indian agent was a government friend and not a friend to us. And I apologize if yours was, but ours wasn't. The Indian agent would physically, sexually, and mentally use to empower them. We couldn't do much in our communities without the Indian agent signing off on it. The Indian agent was a very dictatorship in our community. In Cowsis, the elders remember in 1970 when we had a house party, when the Indian agent left, we went to that house and had a house party, the elders said. In 2022, some people think that the chief now is that modern day dictator or Indian agent style, that I make the final decision. And if I don't fix your house, if I don't do this, if I don't do that, you're going to pay, chief. I get threatened once in a while. I'm not here to vent to you. I'm not here to ask you to feel sorry for me. I'm teaching you about leadership. and empowering you as men as you are each leaders, because the Indian agent mentality of how we view our chief and councils today, it's tough to be a chief or council because we are holding all of that colonization and weight of poverty on our shoulders, and we manage poverty all day long. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for your chief and councils. That's not my intent here. I'm teaching you leadership. That Indian agent puts such an ugly taste in what leadership is in our communities. We have to get rid of that mentality because it is only going to make us a treadmill action-oriented community if that's what it is. And what I mean by that is you think you're running places. When you're on a treadmill, you're actually not even moving. And when you think about how communities are progressing today, we got to first check ourselves to what we view as leadership. And that is something that I learned. And as a chief back home, when someone has to come and vent to me and talk to me and it's the chief's fault, I will sit there and take it. And I will look at them and I'm like, do you feel better now that I heard you? And I'm going to repeat back to you what I said just so you know I heard you. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But that is one of the most important things about empowering our men, is that Indian agent threw us off. And 3 generations of your kukums and mushrooms and great kukums and mushrooms seen that. And now today, it's a different way, but we got to stop. That's my first thing. Being a chief, I absolutely love it because I see it. You got to know the end goal. You have to know your end goal and the role you play. And I had to prepare my mind because I love to understand how to address things. I'm a little too confident as an Indigenous person today. I got to tone it down a little bit. I scared those munyao rooms because I got to tone it down a little bit once in a while. And what I mean by that is one of the things that I had the opportunity to do when I was younger was golf. I became a provincial golf champion in a munyao world. I won the Lobstick Golf Championship, the only Indigenous person in its 98 years existence. And I loved it. And this is how it happened. Oh, thank you. I don't talk about golf in case you want to play for lunch money later, and I'll kind of act all humble about it. This is a story about how my dad raised me to be a very confident man. When I was a little kid, my dad would take me to these junior, I'm going to say white, I mean no disrespect, these white golf tournaments. He used to take me to all these junior white golf tournaments when I was a young guy. And I would go and we'd pull into the parking lot. I'd be the only caramel colored skin there, all vanilla colored skin, and didn't want to be there. I wanted to go home and play golf with the bros because they didn't play rules and all this, and you played for quarters, and I got addicted to winning quarters. And my dad would wake me up on a Saturday morning. Get in the car, we're going to Estevan. Get in the car, we're going to Yorkton. Finally, about the 6th tournament, I was like, Dad, I don't want to go. I'm just going to stay home and go golf with the bros down at the golf course today. Get in that car, we're going. Mom, tell Dad I don't want to go to this golf tournament. Bro, she'd say, take it easy on our boy. My dad would look at me, get in that car right now. I'd admit the way, get in the car. Many golf tournaments my dad and I pulled in, and I lost those golf tournaments. After about the 18th one, I won the junior amateur golf tournament. Then I won the 2nd one. Then I won the 4th one. My dad and I would pull into this golf tournament, and my dad would say, look it, they're looking at us, not because of the res car we're in, he said, but because they're chasing you now, he told me. And you know, today, if it wasn't for how hard my dad was on me, I don't know if I would have a confidence to even stand up here and talk to you the way I am. Because my dad made sure that I feel like a champion in any parking lot I pull into. Just because I'm Indigenous, just because I have a braid doesn't make me any less. And he made sure that, because my dad was born in 48. And he told me later in life how it was just to fight to remain Indian in Calgary in the 60s and 70s. He could never have become an amateur golf champion in that generation because Indians weren't allowed. He could have never won the lobstick because Indians weren't allowed. He could have never represented Saskatchewan 13 times at the national golf events because at his generation that wasn't allowed. He made sure that his son could not only walk into any golf course, but walk into any room and show how proud it is to be Indigenous and never tone it down. That is the importance of how we lift one another up. You know, my father, I give a lot of my credit to because he had challenges, but he was a very funny guy at our kitchen table. He couldn't talk about his feelings because he was raised in his time that men don't cry. He was raised that men shouldn't touch. And plus later in life, he told me he was kind of abused, so he always couldn't even touch me and hug me because of just how much he just couldn't handle that and what he went through. But he made sure that even he can control what that knowledge is that he's handing on. Because the most valuable thing as Indigenous people is not money and wealth. It's making sure our knowledge is handed down. And right now, our kids are listening to every conversation that we have in our home. Our kids are reading what we post on Facebook about one another. Are we instilling our kids to be a resilient Indigenous next generation? We in our generations have been through a lot, and we have all right to admit the way, to find blame, to have anger. I'm with you. We have that right because of what the hell we just been through. But what are we doing to make sure our kids are not being handed that? Because our kids are watching us. And that is the motivation that we need as a driver. When we look in the mirror, are we ready to change? Because there's 3 spheres each of us have as men. That first sphere is what everybody sees. That's where you can walk around showing your eye-neck teeth all day long. And that attitude on the outside. Everybody sees that first sphere. The second sphere is what only your closest people see. And that's sometimes when you're sad, sometimes when you just can't put on that face. There's a third sphere that nobody sees. You only bring it out when you're all alone. And you got to make sure that all 3 of these spheres are connected. Because that's where depression comes in. That's where suicide comes in and thoughts. That's where alone comes in. Because we train ourselves to put that outside sphere as who we think we are and who we want people to persuade us as. But if that third sphere that nobody sees is not similar, you're going to tire yourself out. And we have to find ways to express and release this. Because if you hold it in, you're going to make yourself sick eventually. And it's not just a physical sickness. It could be an emotional or mental as well. We got to create atmospheres as you're doing right now to have uncomfortable conversations. Because the only way to heal from this and get stronger is through uncomfortable conversations. You got to be able to ask for permission to vent, to release. And it's tough for men to do that, especially Indigenous men, because we're always taught to be tough. We're always taught to not show emotions. Don't cry. You know what? I tell you, I cry. I darn watch America's Got Talent, Golden Buzzers, and cry all the time. I watch certain speeches when I'm driving, and I'm just driving home and I'm just howling away because I need to release it. There's certain songs I even have on my phone on Apple, the sad songs it's called. Because I'll play them and I just need to release it. Please find your comfort zone. You know, the next thing I want to move to, and I know I'm late in the day and I still got a bunch to say, but I just want to get a couple more things across here. Something is in our communities right now that we use as a healing, but sometimes it's not used in the right way. And it's called humor, our laughter. One of the great things that our ancestors has always had, and we still continue today, is how funny we are. How laughter is us. When someone comes to the community, I always tell Munyaos this. When you went to the community, did they tease you? They did. Well, that means they like you. I said, that's how we are. We'll tease you if we like you. You know, then to each other, you know, I got so many nicknames at home because I'm always cheeky and people are cheeky back with me because humor has always been a part of our people. Many, many generations ago, even before reserves, humor was used as a law to keep us together. And this is how it worked. If we were a tribe 200 years ago, and we all had duties, because at that time there was no children in care and there was no unemployment. Everybody had a duty. And if one of us were a couch potato, capable of working, but we just slept in because the buffalo hides were just too soft, and we're pretending we're on Facebook on our hand 200 years ago, and just, we would tease that person. Tease them to make sure that they're working just as hard as us. We wouldn't give them heck because everything about us is relationship. We would tease them. And if they didn't still work hard, then we would make them set up their teepee 200 yards away from us. And we'd stand here and laugh at them. And they'd be over there still trying to be stubborn and not work, trying to start their fire, and they'd hear a wolf howl, and they know they tasted really good of wolves. And okay, I'll come back and work harder. That's us. We didn't give each other heck. We teased each other. Then colonization happened. Then this oppression started. The Indian Act, residential schools, reserves, there's two kind of humors in our communities today, and we got to identify them. One of them is a helium humor. That is our ancestors' humor. That's the one that we need. Helium humor lifts each other up. This is helium humor. When I want to get romantic with my wife, we go to KFC and lick each other's fingers after we're done. Nobody gets hurt in that joke. This whole room just lifted. The only one that when she was here, my wife would say, we don't do that anymore. That's helium humor. Didn't you just feel that in this room? But there's a second humor. It's weighted humor. That lateral violence humor. That humor of teasing each other because of race, because of body, because of last names, because of on versus off reserve. That lateral violence humor is deadly. It is not nice at all, but we have seemed to welcome in that weighted humor. We must check that weighted humor before we laugh and make sure we're using helium humor. I'm going to give you an example. This is a very, very direct example. Years ago, I was in the men's hockey dressing room. I'm not a good hockey player. I'm the one that you'll tell me, save the water for the good players. You'd tell me that. But I'm always, I like to laugh. I'm the cheeky one in the dressing room. This man in our dressing room said this real ignorant, funny thing about a female. And we laughed. And I'll never forget this moment. This guy stood up and he just yelled, "Your freaking mothers are women. You shouldn't be laughing at that." And I like, holy shit. I was like, I just laughed at weighted humor. And so today, I'm still that funny guy I try and always persuade and be, but I check my humor before I use it. And it's funny. Be funny. Use it. But just check yourself, because we are now being added on to this lateral violence that we're trying to stop. One of the things we must admit is no one is coming to help us. Let's not fantasize like someone is coming to help us. In our own communities, in our own families, in our own homes, that kitchen table is the most important table to our healing. And we must just own and grab what we just inherited. Let's own it. And let's just hold on to it without trying to kiam and look the other way anymore. And let's open up that Pandora box, and we're going to get scared. Don't be shy to show your fear. One residential school survivor told me a year and a half ago, after I talked about unmarked graves, he asked me, "Chief, are you afraid?" And this is an older man. I was like, "I don't know. I don't think so." He's like, show us that you can be afraid. He says, "Because we watch you," he said. He says, "We watch you on TV, we watch you. And if you can show that you're not afraid to be afraid, then it's going to show other people that it's not a bad thing to be afraid." And then when he told me that, I'm still kind of processing it. But I'm like, I am afraid sometimes, I told him. Like, I do get scared. I get feared of the direction we're going sometimes, and how it's hard for us to address these direct things that are going on. And so that's really important when we're addressing this decolonization. Because what is colonization? I'm going to tell you what colonization is, because we live it every day. It's a normal thing. We don't even realize it, how much it's just ingrained in us. This is what colonization is. I'm going to explain it to you through my maternal lineage. My great-great-grandmother, her name was Gracie, born in 1874. That was her English name. Never attended a residential school. Was old enough to remember a reserve, but she lived that free life of pre-reserves. She got her vertical lineage teachings from her mom and grandma. That's what made our Indigenous ancestors so resilient, was that vertical lineage. Gracie had my great-grandma Maggie. Maggie was born in 1900, and in 1905 attended the Round Lake Indian Industrial School. Maggie should have got Gracie's vertical lineage teachings, because that's what makes us Indigenous people so resilient. But Maggie didn't. Maggie went into horizontal survival mode with her sisters and cousins in residential school. That physical, sexual, mental abuse was real. Maggie had my grandma Evelyn. Second generation. Evelyn should have got that vertical lineage teaching that made our ancestors so resilient, but Evelyn didn't. Evelyn went into horizontal survival mode. Evelyn had my mom Charlotte. Charlotte should have got Maggie and Evelyn's vertical lineage teachings. Charlotte didn't. Charlotte went into horizontal survival mode with her sisters and cousins. In 1982, Charlotte had me. My mother, I never attended a residential school. My mother had to figure out how to raise a young man while trying to control her locus of control on that anger and tiredness and bitterness and frustration of what the heck she just went through. I'm very honored to share with you that my 6-year-old daughter and my mom right now are inseparable. My vertical lineage teachings is getting stronger. In your communities, in this city, in this province, every one of us in this room that has an affiliation to a residential school survivor, some of us, that vertical lineage is there again. I praise and thank and want to learn more. Some are at a 45-degree angle. You're getting stronger. Don't give up. Keep going. We'll invest. Some, in 2022, 100% horizontal survival mode still. Let's not judge. Let's know that we're going to own it now. And we're going to focus on the end goal. And what is the end goal? To get that vertical lineage back. Because that's what the intent of these policies 150 years ago wanted. And let's make sure we show them that our ancestors, our kukums and mushums, and all of you in this room, that they have never defeated us and they never will. That is the importance. My phone keeps going off. I got to make sure everything's all right. Told my wife I have an X in Treaty 6. She keeps checking on me now. 10 more minutes. Can I have 10 more minutes of your time? I know I'm your end of your day and I don't want to keep you too long. I just need 10 more minutes. I want to give you some tips and recommendations on your journey. I read a book years ago that helps me keep grounded. It's called The Law of the Garbage Truck. It's by the author. His name is David Poley. And this is what it is. Every day in our journey, when we wake up till we lay down, there are moving garbage trucks around us. And what we mean by that is people around you will spill their garbage on you. And you accept it and you hold on to it. And what I mean by that is problems, complaints, issues. And we are loving people. We're going to help. But why this book is so important is this book teaches you how to let the garbage pass by, but still address that relationship and situation. This book, The Law of the Garbage Truck, teaches you to check yourself before you're going to spill your garbage on other people. Because sometimes when you check your bros and your circles of friends, if you have a circle of friends where you're just so frustrated because all you kind of see is like issues and challenges, it's because you're kind of feeding each other's garbage nonstop of issues and problems, and that's not a bad thing. But if you need to check your circles to make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that are lifting and helping, maybe you got to look in the mirror and check, am I just constantly spilling my garbage on other people and I'm like scaring them away? The thing with this book is it's really important that we must release our garbage. I have garbage. I'm a garbage truck. But this book teaches you how when someone comes to you and just starts spilling their garbage on you, that you let it pass by. You don't take it personal. Because once you take it personal and once you hold on to it, it's tough to let go, and then that problem becomes yours. And we already have 3 or 4 problems going on. And it gets very heavy and burdensome. It really teaches you the importance of letting it pass you by. Secondly, when you need to spill your garbage, because don't hold on to your personal garbage. Ask for permission first. That's what this book teaches you. When I get home from a hard day of chief work, I'll sit down and I'll look at my wife and I'm like, can I vent to you for 5 minutes? I just need to say something. And it's not good. My wife will say, okay. My wife is ready to let my garbage pass by so she can listen to me. That is what this book teaches you. is to ask for permission before. Because I tell you, when you do that, you ever go up to someone and you're like, oh, damn it. And you just start telling them and you didn't even ask them for permission and they're just staring at you. It's not that they don't want to listen to you. It's just that they probably have a bunch of garbage and they're trying to listen to yours. Like you didn't pause and ask them for permission to spill yours. That's what this book teaches you. Is that's how we heal. Is don't hold it in because it'll make you sick. Don't let other people's garbage get to you personally because it's going to impact you. Learn to let it pass you by. It really calms me down as a person today helping when someone comes to me and I'm like, Cadmus, law of the garbage truck. And I'm like, okay, then I repeat the issue back to them. And they're like, yes, that's it. I'm like, okay, that's the situation. Now, what are we going to do about it? But, I just teach you that it's a mind thing. I want to finish off by telling you a little bit about our ancestors and what schools are. I had so much pictures for you. I'm just talking here. Hang on, I want to show you a couple pictures here. Here's the pictures of our ancestors. I always say they're from Cowses because they look real tough. This is a picture that was dated back to the early 1900s, and it shows 3 of our ancestors. And I want to explain to you what the end goal is and what happened. Cowses, 18 months ago, took full jurisdiction back of our children in care across this country. Full jurisdiction. And this is how we did it. 4 years ago, I was sitting with the Minister of Social Services in this province, and I asked him, tell me where Cowses said, here's our children ministry, you look after them. Tell me where we did that, I told him, in our history. I don't know, Chief, he said. Because we didn't, I tell him. We still have sovereignty to this. And this is what happened. And this is how governments look at us, and this is how we have to understand how they look at us. Because when you're leaders of your communities, and not just elected leaders, you got to know what our governments and colonizing minds are viewing us as. This is it. In 1485, there was something called Doctrine of Discovery, where Christopher Columbus put his flag in this little island called Turks and Caicos, and it was this game called Doctrine of Discovery. Because on this land, we didn't pray to how they prayed to their God. We didn't have fences around our homes the way they have fences. We didn't grow gardens the way they did. They can colonize and conquer and own this title. That was Doctrine of Discovery. It was a very racist, fictional game in Europe. So that underlying title was assumed by the crown at the time. In 1820, in the United States, they were already a country. The United States was telling the Cherokees, you can't do this. The Cherokees hired a lawyer under the United States system. They took a case all the way to the United States Supreme Court called the Marshall Trilogy of 1822. The Marshall Trilogy said the following to the Cherokee. Cherokee, you're sovereign. But because of Doctrine of Discovery, because we conquered you, you're domestically sovereign under the United States of America. Okay? In 1888 in Canada, the St. Catharines milling case, the Ojibways, Canada was a country by then, the Ojibways told Canada, you can't tell us how to run our affairs on logging. They took a court case all the way, because we didn't have a Supreme Court yet, to the British Supreme Court. The British Supreme Court said this to the Ojibways. Ojibways, you're sovereign in Canada, but because of Doctrine of Discovery and because of the Marshall Trilogy in the United States, you are domestically sovereign under Canada. I'm just telling you. I don't agree with this. I'm just telling you. In 1876, the Indian Act was implemented. No one ever came to your nations to ask, can we implement the Indian Act? No, because they said, we have this duty because those nations are domestically sovereign under our sovereignty. We are going to implement the Indian Act. In 1951, the ministry in this province called Social Services decided to take control of all of our children in care. No one ever came to our communities in 1951. They took Section 88 of the Indian Act and told your nations, told houses, we now have jurisdiction over your children in care. No one ever come and asked. In 2021, Kausis, we ratified a law called the Mio Pima Tisiwin Act, striving for a better life, our own Child Welfare Act. And we told Canada and the provinces, Awas, get out of here. You never have, we have our own jurisdiction. And guess what? They awast. Because we did that. And why I say that is as we're healing as a macro, as a forest, because we're the leaves. Our families and communities are the trees, but as nations, we're the forest. When I'm talking forest right now, you gotta know how governments view us. Since Kausis took full jurisdiction over our children in care, we have no children in protection in our community anymore. We knew what the families needed. We invested in that vertical lineage immediately and returned those children back to their families. We have mothers going back to university right now. The kids get to watch mom and or dad do homework and get ready for university. We have grandparents we're giving respite to because grandparents were afraid to tell the ministry before. Like, we are on a healing journey, and you got to own what we inherited. And that's the whole intent of my speech. I got two last things. I keep saying two last things because I just kind of keep talking. I got two last things. What is the end goal? Chief Kausis, chief I get to represent today, just like your chiefs. Treaty was a tough time for our ancestors. Treaty 4 is where I originate from. 2 days before Treaty 4, Chief Kausis was confused. He was an older man, only spoke Soto and Cree. He was confused because he knew change was coming. He watched half of his family perish in the smallpox pandemic of 1860. He watched the buffalo deplete in 1870. The only thing he's ever been taught to sustain our way of life. He watched new Canadian settlers coming to this land in 1872. He's seen all this change coming, but he didn't know what this treaty meant. 2 days before Treaty 4, he was sitting under the tent of Alexander Morris in the commissioner's tent, just watching. Everybody was going to this one person. This person wasn't a titled person. They weren't like a commissioner, but everybody was going to this one person. So finally, Chief Kausis asked the interpreter, who's that person? And the interpreter said, he's a lawyer. Chief Kausis said, what's a lawyer? And the interpreter said, he went to a school. We taught him to read books. He knows he's the law. He went to law school. There's a school, the interpreter said, called a law school. Chief Kausis said, if I agree to this treaty, will you make sure my children and children yet unborn be like him, but always make sure they remain like me? And the interpreter went to Alexander Morris. Alexander Morris came back and through the interpreter said, Chief, that's exactly why we want to do this treaty with you. So your kids and kids yet unborn can be like that man, but we will always make sure you can sustain your way of life. Chief Kausis touched the pen 2 days later, optimistic of a future. Think of two canoes going down the river. One canoe is Kausis, the rights holder. We're rights holders. We're not shareholders. We're not stakeholders in this country. We're rights holders. And replace Kausis with your nation. The other canoe is the Crown, Canada, Saskatchewan. Chief Kausis envisioned two canoes going down the river. As long as the sun shines, grass grows, river flows. Always changing our mandates and positions every generation. We were to exchange a child in each canoe to be raised to know that other ideology and then be given back. That is the intent of treaty. But this is what happened to us. The Indian Act was thrown in our canoe 2 years later during Treaty 6. The Indian Act had one purpose: to imprison the minds of our canoe. That women no longer played a role in our governance structure. That the government will send an Indian agent and show you what a leader is. That the government became the parent and we became the child. We became dependent. Our canoes fell behind a little bit. 22 years later, the residential school was thrown in our canoe. It had one purpose: to brainwash us in our canoe. That men didn't know the spiritual connection to our braid anymore. That vertical lineage didn't matter anymore. That the government will tell us who to pray to. Our canoe fell behind even more. In 2022, right to this day, all we want to do is catch up. All we want is parity in this country while remaining that indigenous worldview. We don't want Canada to slow down. We don't want to go down another river. We're not telling Canada to go back to Europe. At least I'm not. Some in my canoe are. I was telling, well, that's not real. That's not going to happen. All we want to do is catch up. And we want to tell Canada and the provinces, "Awas, get out of our canoe. And quit trying to make us sink our canoe. Invest in our canoe. Invest in our tribal police in our canoe. Invest in our child welfare in our canoe. Invest in our education in our canoe. Because you inherited this too. Just because we're challenged in our canoe, the other canoe has a responsibility as well. And they out there are getting it. I got to tell you, I speak a lot in non-caramel colored rooms. And they get it. But here is my closing. We have one enemy today, and that's one another in our canoe. We must focus on our canoe. And this is what's going on in our canoe right now. In our canoe, because of what we inherited, we have a little bit of loss of control. A little bit of loss of control in our spiritual. And that's also religious. I never tell people who to pray to, but I hope you have faith. Everybody needs a prayer. We have loss of control in our health. It's mental, physical, emotional. We have loss of control in our economic. We have loss of control in our cultural, language, political, and social. We got to be able to talk about this loss of control. Because if we don't, all those words on the outside are going to continue. We got to own it, because that is how we're going to persevere and get through this moment. Because we are the most resilient and good-looking people of this land. And we're going to do it. And I want to leave you with one legendary story, and I'm going to tell you a picture. But before I do, I just want to show you a picture of my mom and dad. Here's a picture of my mom and dad and my wife on the day I got my master's. And my mom is 72. She's in Vegas right now. I hope she's not doing things in Vegas we shouldn't be doing. She's down there with my sister. My dad passed away in 2017, but he got to see me be a chief. He got to see me be a provincial golf champion, and he got to see me get my master's. My mom and dad, I believe, raised me to go and show our kids what reconciliation truly can be. And I take that very seriously. I'm not up here trying to act any better than any of you. I want to just show our kids that reconciliation is exactly what we want it to be. And that's what my parents did to me since I was a little kid. My wife is my pride. Her and I are on this journey together. We fight a lot, but we will never let that bother us, just like any couple. Relationships are tough. I'm not here to be your therapist, but I learned through marriage that forgiveness is not a feeling, but a commitment. And I say that to the married men in here because I think you know what that means. But I just wanted to show you that. There's a legendary story of the hummingbird, but I want to show you a funny picture first. Last summer, Justin and Scott came to Cowsis to sign this coordination agreement, confirming the Cowsis canoe and confirming the Awast got out. And we each gave a speech. I spoke, and then Prime Minister, and then Premier. And I spoke first. I'll try to be humble, but I gave a pretty good speech. And when I walked off the podium, Justin was standing there on Cowsis at our Powell Arbor. And he stood up and he reached out. So first thing I did is I reached out and he pulled me in really fast. And I don't know why, but my first reaction was to put my hand behind him. I don't know why, but I put my hand behind him. And he looked at me and he says, "Did you write that speech?" "No, big guy, that was all from the heart," I told him. "Amazing," he said, "amazing." And so later that night, my wife and I were in bed doing what married couples do before bed. We're both on our phones beside each other. And she shows me this picture. First time I seen it because I was so busy all day. She puts her phone in my face. "Look. Cool," I told her. She's like, "Well, I sure wish you looked at me the way you looked at Justin." I told her, "Honey, if someone just invested millions in your canoe, you'd be looking at them like that too." I'll finish you off with a legendary story, and I'm absolutely done. Our ancestors, we always had schools. They weren't brick schools. They weren't books. Our schools were stories. Every story has a lesson. Every story has identity and affirmation. Every story builds so much confidence in our ancestors that they would smile and laugh in times of fear. And they knew that next world, that whatever men did, their role was to protect women and men at all costs. Our indigenous legendary stories were so powerful that they would teach our kids from 3 to 10. They would know 1,000 legendary stories. And that's what made us resilient. Today, we have to now reawaken those stories. I got 4 of them, but I'm only going to tell you one because I really overstepped my time here. This is the legendary. Did you want to hear 2 of them? Okay, I'll tell you 2 of them. This is the legendary story of the dogs. Picture yourself sitting in a teepee. You're about to just get educated by an indigenous legendary story. Just put yourself in that pure state right now. One day, all the dogs decided to have this grand meeting amongst other dogs. So the dog runners ran out to go tell the other dogs about this meeting. This Cree male from Flying Dust, yeah, I'm just trying to throw you in there now, heard these dogs talking, and he said, "I'll come to your meeting." And the dog said, "No, humans are forbidden. This is for dogs only." Well, you know, as humans, when we don't get our way, we kind of mit the way, eh? So this man started pouting, mit the way, because he couldn't come to this meeting. All these dogs got to this grand big teepee where they were going to meet. Every dog would walk up to the teepee, unhook their tail, put it on the outside of the teepee, and then go inside. When all these dogs were in the teepee, they started their meeting. This Cree male was still mit the way. He was going to teach these dogs a lesson because that's what we want to do in life when we don't get our way sometimes. He started a fire behind the teepee. And when it got big enough, he banged on it. Fire! All these dogs in the teepee started panicking. There was only one door, so every dog was trying to get out, and there was so many tails on the teepee, a dog couldn't find its own tail. So a dog would grab any tail it could, hook it on, and then take off running. That's why today when two dogs meet each other, they sniff each other's tail because they're still looking for their original tail. That is a legendary story. We know what those Kakash dogs are up to today. I'm not going to dance around that. But get this. Imagine being with your son, your nephew, or your grandson, and you're in your community, and they grab your arm and they say, Dad, Musham, Uncle, look at that dog is looking for its original tail. You're both going to lift with helium humor right there, because that's what our indigenous values are. Here's a second one. This is a serious one. This is a real tough one to accept, but I'm going to tell it to you because I just feel it's right. Here's the legendary story of the snake. One day, this 11-year-old boy had to prove himself, because all men, we had to prove ourselves, and we still do today in different means. But back in our ancestors' time, they put you on a day challenge. And what this challenge was is this boy had to walk all the way up this mountain to the top to get this root. That was his challenge, that he had to prove himself. And so his musham packed him up a bag of pemmican, bag of water, and a pouch for that root, and sent his grandson on that way, because every man had to do it. This little boy was confident. Halfway through the day, he made it halfway up the mountain, sat on the edge, started eating his pemmican, kept on going. 2/3 up, he sits down on a cliff, no more trees, really high, and he hears this rattle. And right away, his musham's voice, never trust a snake. That's what his musham always taught him. So he had a knife, and he was going to turn around, and he was just about to swipe the snake, and that snake started talking to him. I'm not supposed to be up here. An eagle dropped me here. It's lunch later. I got special powers. And this little boy said, no, my musham told me never trust a snake. I gotta do this. And the snake said, I'll grant you a wish if you take me down. And this little boy started feeling optimistic about life. Okay, I want you to get in this pouch because I don't trust you. And the snake coiled up in the pouch, and the boy tied it. Walked all the way down the hill, the mountain, thinking about what he was going to wish for. He got to the bottom. He took it, unraveled it, and dropped the snake. And right before he was going to tell it this wish, that snake bit him. And as that boy laid there with poison, that snake slithered away. Your musham told you about me. You knew. Oh, a real deadly story, eh? The moral of the story: our parents, our grandparents, your elders are trying to tell you something. We gotta listen to the message within the message. This little boy's grandfather told him, because there are many snakes out there in this world that will take advantage of you. And it's now time that we take that voice of what we've always been told and truly listen to it and stay on that path. I thank you very much for listening to me this afternoon. Nanaskaman. I left it on. Thank you.
Masi Cho Cadmus Delorme. And that was a really good presentation. Many stories. Boy, it could have kept going, I'm sure. But it is the end of the day, but don't leave yet. If you want to win a prize, we're going to do some door prizes. So we'll ask one of the ladies to come up here. And there's a movie at 7 o'clock at the theater. It is a free movie. Free movie. For those of you who got a ticket, you got free large popcorn and a pop. if you want to go, you have to buy your own popcorn and pop. So lucky to the ones I got one. You know, before we leave here, I just want to say I want to thank MLTC for having me here for the 2 days of the MC. I'm going to travel back to the Treaty 4 territory behind Cadmus here all the way to Musha. And again, you know, it's been a good 2 days. I heard a lot of good stuff here that are shared. You know, it's very important, I believe, as I went around and talked to some people. I hope you guys take this home and you start your own men's group, or you start your own little meeting to be able to do this and share, you know. Okay. Okay. And I'm told that. Okay. If we can get some people to sign up for the movie tonight, so we get an idea of how many, then you can probably have free popcorn, pop and popcorn. So check with the ladies on the way out, but before that, we're going to give away these boots. Sit back down, eh? You got to be here. I'm not giving them away. Not cheap. So once again, thank you for having me. It's been an honor, pleasure to be here. Masi Cho, the food, the cooks, the organizers, the ladies in the back taking care of my daughter. You know, we had to drop off my son the other day in Isla Crosse, and then we had to travel here. So we got to do that, all that good stuff. So Masi Cho, appreciate it. Let's get going with the door prizes. Everybody's anxious here. I wish this MC would stop talking and give away prizes. 264. Hola. 264-6737. 6737. Mats? Dodi? I can't see you. You got to come up right here. Where are you from? Atakakoop. Okay. Atakakoop. Which? This one? No, I picked from over here. Oh, you picked from? Yeah, right here. You need a haircut? Okay. Thank you. Go home and give free haircuts, okay? 6780. 6780. Nobody? Tomorrow, the ladies, the nurses there, they're going to be back here tomorrow if anybody wants to get testing done as well. 6780, nothing. 6746. Right there, 46. 6746. Where are you from? Big River First Nation, Whitefish? Fish or fish? Thank you, thank you. $6816. 6816. Over here? Oh, where you from? Gold Eagle Casino, he says. Gold Horse. Waterhen Lake. You work at the Gold Horse? Oh, okay. There we go. Okay. $6840. 6840. Anybody? Right there. Where are you from? Waterhen? Oh, everything is going back to Waterhen here. We're going to go over Waterhen Lake. One time I played hockey there, boy, oh boy. they had back in the day when DeLorme was, they had a camera on the stands. Who remembers those days? 6742. 6742 right there. Nope. Where are you from? White Fists again. Oh, a lot. These guys here just trying to take everything. Hey, congratulations. You can pick one of these here. 6795. 6795. You got it? From where? Montreal Lake, the home of the $100,000 fishing derby that is happening in March. But don't cheat like those guys on the internet, eh? You're putting weights in the fish here. They got caught. 264-6810. 6810. Right there here. Where are you from? Flying Dust. Oh. Boots.
What size you wear?
12.
This is 12. Bigfoot.
Knife set. From Flying Dust. 6834. 6834. 6834. Going once. Put it back.
First person to wear size 12, come up here.
Okay. 6787. 6787. From Cold Lake to Chotwe. What size are your feet? Right here. We got a pair of boots. You're ready for winter. Chotwe. 6844. 6844. We got a bingo? Where is he from? Where are you from? Minnesota. Tackle box? From Minnesota. So I'm going to call up Labada here, give him 2 minutes. Closing remarks on the day. Is he here? Did he leave? I believe he is gone. So with that, gentlemen, oh, he's here. Where is he? Oh, right here. I was looking for a blue jacket. So just going to call him up here, and we're going to finish her off the day. So just wait, gentlemen, please take a moment, couple minutes. I know it's been a long day.
I just told him closing remarks is usually done before giving out the prizes. So people stick around in the future. But give this young man a hand. He's been here 2 days. He's getting better. And I think he's going to be an excellent MC in about 10 years' time. You'll grow into it. And one of the things today has been a very heavy day for a lot of us. A lot of experiences, a lot of things that have gone through in life, you share. And I see a lot of networking, talking to each other, the men. The men have opened up. I see that. They're starting to talk about the issues. And also at the same time, they're planning on what to do. So some of you are first-time men's conference. Give yourselves a hand. That's an awesome guy. Tomorrow, I'm going to be emceeing, so it's going to be quick and fast. I'm just kidding. Anyways, have a good evening, and I'll go to that movie tonight and laugh a little bit. Marcy Chok. Look in your studies. Ano account?
No, not yet.
I mean, 2 more years.
Yeah. Yeah.
You fired me? It's okay.
It's off now.
It won't be the first time.
Hey, don't forget to sign up for the movie there if you're going to the movie. Free popcorn, free pop. Sign up with the ladies on the way out.
Yeah,
Masi.